Hey guys, tonight we're time traveling through sheer accident, because you, for some unknowable reason, just woke up in King Arthur's medieval kingdom. Yeah. You open your eyes and immediately realize something is off. You're lying on a lumpy mattress stuffed with hay, wrapped in a wool blanket that smells suspiciously like wet sheep. There's a draft blowing across your toes from a hole in the stone wall. Outside, a rooster crows with alarming urgency, and you hear hooves clopping across uneven cobblestone. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your brain does its morning diagnostics. Nope, not your apartment. Nope, not your century. You might still be dreaming, or maybe you just got ice-skied into a world that romanticizes swords, chivalry, and a complete lack of central heating. You swing your legs off the mattress and immediately regret it. The floor is ice cold, made of cracked stone, and your shoes, if you can call these leather-flapped shoes, feel like wet paper. There's no toothbrush. No phone. Not even a toilet. The room smells like smoke, goat, and desperation. Through the open wooden shutters, you spot a castle rising in the distance, tall and proud, with soaring gray towers and fluttering banners. Camelot, you made it. It looks glorious from far away. But as you open the creaky wooden door and step out into the village, the illusion starts to fray. Chickens scatter underfoot. The street is more mud than road. There's a pig lounging in what appears to be the town's only puddle. People are already up, hauling buckets, sweeping dirt, yelling about bread. A town crier in a ragged cloak stands in the square, bellowing something about taxes and a rogue chicken. You glance around, disoriented. A few villagers squint at you. One woman eyes your modern haircut like it's witchcraft. A toothless old man points a crooked finger and mutters something about you being a forest elf. Cool. You're already that guy. You stagger toward a public well, hoping to splash your face and think, but your arrival has caught attention. A gangly boy in a too-big tunic runs up, panting. You're new, he says, like it's an accusation. Are you one of Arthur's? Before you can answer, you hear galloping. A knight, yes, a real knight, rides into the village on a dusty brown horse. He's armored, but it's not all that shiny. In fact, it's kind of dented. His helmet is tucked under his arm, revealing sweaty curls and a sunburned face. Boy. He shouts to the crowd. We've got a guest. Get them something to eat. And maybe hose them down. He squints at you. You smell like thunder. Great. You smell like weather. You get dragged to the village hearth, a big stone fire pit surrounded by benches. A woman hands you a bowl of what might be porridge. It's gray. It jiggles. It tastes like sadness. As you try not to gag, a booming voice interrupts. You turn. Another knight, taller, older, wearing a crimson cloak and the look of a man who regrets most of his decisions, looms above you. You're the outsider. Come with me. His Majesty would have words. Just like that, you're whisked onto a saddle, clinging to the knight like a backpack as the horse trots toward Camelot proper. You pass rows of tilled farmland, peasants bent over with hoes and rakes, and a cluster of hooded monks singing something in Latin. You wave awkwardly. They do not wave back. Approaching the castle, you realize how massive it is. The drawbridge creaks as you cross. Inside, stone walls stretch skyward, banners depicting dragons and lions flutter in the breeze, and guards eye you like you're wearing a bomb vest. Which, in fairness, a hoodie with a zipper might as well be. The knight leads you through a narrow corridor to a chamber filled with tapestries, a roaring fire. And at least 2 dogs. And then, you see him, King Arthur. He's not exactly how Disney drew him. Mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with a weary gaze and calloused hands. He's wearing chainmail like it's casual Friday. A gold circlet rests on his brow, tilted slightly like he's worn it too long, so, he says, eyeing you with amusement. You're the one Merlin mentioned. Wait, Merlin? Yeah, Arthur continues. He said a stranger would arrive. Smelling like burnt clouds. Not helpful, as usual. You try to respond, but your mouth is full of fear and the lingering taste of porridge. Arthur waves his hand. No matter. We could use fresh blood. The kingdom's complicated right now. You'll find that out. A dog trots over and licks your boot. Arthur laughs. See? You've already won over the hound. That's more than I can say for half my council. A door opens behind you. A woman in fine linen strides in, eyes sharp, hair braided with tiny bronze rings. Queen Guinevere. She looks you over with cool curiosity. He's scruffy, she says. But interesting. Arthur grins. Aren't we all? They assign you quarters in the West Wing, just slightly fancier stone than the peasant hut. Your bed has actual feathers, and your chamber pot is, well, less horrifying. There's a squire who brings you food, which is now only slightly gray. Later that night, as you lie in bed staring at the flickering shadows on the ceiling, you hear voices in the hallway. Do you think he's really the one? Someone whispers, Merlin says so. Another replies. Says the outsider holds a key. Or a curse. Or a very small dragon. You know how he is. You pull the blanket over your head and sigh. So now you're a prophecy. Great. At least you're not the only one confused, and just like that, you drift off to the smell of candle wax, the distant howl of wolves, and the vague sense that someone may try to stab you before breakfast. The next morning hits you like a sack of wet hay, which, incidentally, is exactly what your pillow feels like. You wake up bleary-eyed in the dim light of dawn, your neck a roadmap of regrets from sleeping at a 45-degree angle on what might as well be a pile of rocks in a bag. Outside your narrow slit of a window, a bell clangs with brutal enthusiasm. Not a nice ding-dong kind of bell, but a medieval, clang until your eardrums crack kind. You sit up, groaning, and look around your room. Stone walls. Wooden beams. An actual spider the size of a coin dangling over your face like it's your new roommate. No bathroom. No light switch. The fire's gone out, and your breath fogs visibly in the air. Someone knocks, more of a bang, really, and before you can respond, a small boy barrels in. He's your designated squire, which means he's about 10, full of energy, and entirely too excited to hand you a wooden comb and a chunk of soap shaped like a potato. Sir guest, he says solemnly, I've drawn your bath. This sounds promising, until he leads you down a winding staircase into a stone room with a steaming wooden tub full of slightly brown water. A single candle flickers on a barrel. You sniff cautiously. The water smells earthy. You decide not to ask what heated it. Or what else was in it before you take the plunge. It's warm, kind of. You scrub yourself with the mystery soap while the boy chatters on about a man who accidentally washed with lard last week and got attacked by dogs. Welcome to medieval mornings. Once you're dressed, in a tunic that smells like damp linen and a belt that barely fits, you're escorted to the castle courtyard, where the real chaos begins. Chickens. So many chickens. Apparently, the castle keeps them for eggs, but no one's keeping them out of the way. One flaps right into your knee. Breakfast is served in a great hall echoing with chatter and the occasional shriek. You get a bowl of pottage, a lumpy stew made from yesterday's leftovers and whatever root vegetables haven't gone squishy. It's edible. Sort of. You chew carefully, wondering if the crunchy bit was onion or pebble. Next to you, a knight slurps his food with abandon, then uses his sleeve as a napkin. He glances over at you. First pottage? He asks, you nod. He grins, a front tooth conspicuously missing. Takes a few years to get used to it. Or to stop tasting it. Either way, you'll live. Somewhere near the fire, a bard strums a lute and sings a tragic ballad about a goose who fell in love with a helmet. It's either a metaphor or complete nonsense. Nobody seems to care. A town crier bursts in, yelling about a goat stuck in a well. Again. You're not sure if it's a recurring goat or just the same deeply unlucky one. After breakfast, you're invited, or voluntold, really, to join a castle chores rotation. Not exactly a glorious fate, but it's this or stand around looking ominous. You choose chores. First up, the latrines. Medieval sanitation is creative. There's a trench behind the outer wall, cleverly engineered to funnel waste into a creek. Which sounds fine until you realize it's also downstream from the well. Historians still argue whether medieval people understood germs, but from your vantage point, the answer appears to be, not at all. You spend half an hour with a bucket and a big stick, trying not to gag. Next, you're sent to the stables. The horses are magnificent, tall, strong, and deeply judgmental. One snorts directly in your face like it's inspecting your soul. The stable boy hands you a pitchfork and gestures toward a mound of hay that's less hay and more steaming evidence of digestion. You do your best. The horse watches the entire time like it's keeping score. By midday, you're exhausted, covered in questionable smudges, and starving again. Lunch is stale bread with hard cheese and something called ale, which tastes like a mix of vinegar and regret. Still, it does dull your sense of smell, so that's something. As you sit by a window nibbling your stone bread sandwich, you watch the villagers below. Life moves slowly. People barter for onions, fix their roofs with thatch, and chase geese like it's a full-time job. Kids play with sticks. One girl is expertly juggling turnips. You're still adjusting when Guinevere appears, walking silently like she's floating across the floor. Her gown trails behind her like a liquid shadow, and she eyes you with polite detachment. You've survived your first morning, she says. Congratulations. You look mostly intact. You attempt a bow. She stops you. Don't. It looks painful. Then, she glides away. Possibly to judge someone else's posture. Later, you're sent to watch sword training in the outer yard. Dozens of squires and knights clash with wooden weapons, grunting and yelling like someone swapped their language settings to angry Latin. You sit on a hay bale, trying to stay invisible. The master-at-arms, a burly man with one eye and zero humor, stomps over you. New meat. Get up. Apparently, spectating is not an option. He tosses you a practice sword, it's basically a club with ambitions, and points to the ring. You square off with a kid who's at least 5 inches shorter than you but twice as angry. He lunges. You panic. Your sword slips. You both trip. Everyone laughs. Even the one-eyed man chuckles. Not bad, he says. For a duck. You have no idea what that means, but you'll take the win. By the time the sun begins to set, bleeding orange across the cloudy sky, you're ready to collapse. But there's a twist. Apparently, bath time is again. Because one medieval truth is this: if you smell bad enough, someone will dunk you in a barrel against your will. This time, the water is cold. The squire forgot to heat it. You scream like a banshee. He laughs like it's the highlight of his week. It probably is. As you towel off with a square of burlap, you catch your reflection in a bronze plate. You look tired. Dusty. Slightly feral. But weirdly alive. and then, you hear it. A horn, someone's approaching the castle. A traveler. Or a threat. No one seems sure. You're hustled back to your room and told to stay put. You sit by the tiny fire, wrapped in your itchy blanket, sipping watery ale. The castle murmurs with tension outside your door. Footsteps. Whispers. Steel on stone, welcome to Camelot. Where mornings start with cold water and end with suspense. Where nothing is clean, and nothing is safe, but also everything feels strangely real, and for the first time, you wonder, could you actually survive this place? Maybe even belong. You wake to the sound of swords clanging. Again. Apparently, dawn in Camelot is synonymous with loud metal and shouting. There's no such thing as a gentle alarm clock here, just yelling squires, restless horses, and knights having full-blown practice duels outside your window like it's an action movie on loop. You groan and sit up. Every muscle aches. You've discovered new parts of your body. Medieval soreness is incredibly thorough. Your back feels like it's been politely stabbed by time. Today, you're summoned early to the inner courtyard, and not by choice. A royal page, not your chirpy little squire this time, hands you a scroll and says, "You've been requested by the High Council." You stare. That's good. He shrugs. Depends. They yell a lot. Wonderful. After throwing on a tunic, slightly less itchy this time, you're led through arched corridors and across an open courtyard to the council hall, a grand room with wooden beams, iron sconces, and a round table smack in the middle. And yes, the round table. The legendary symbol of Arthur's equality, unity, and occasional chair shortages. There are about a dozen knights seated when you arrive, some wearing full armor, others more relaxed in thick cloaks or weathered leather. You spot Sir Gawain, young, handsome, with that unfortunate arrogance of a man who knows he looks good in chainmail. Sir Percival is yawning. Sir Kay is frowning at a scroll like it insulted his mother. Arthur enters last. The room quiets, he gestures to you. Let's have the newcomer stand among legends. You shuffle forward, trying not to trip over your own dignity. Arthur introduces you as the stranger foretold and claims you bring an outsider's eye to their challenges. You're pretty sure that's medieval code for "we have no idea what to do with you." Then, Sir Gawain speaks. Can they fight? Arthur smiles faintly. Not well. Yet. Everyone chuckles except Sir Kay, who mutters, "They'll be dead by Thursday." Arthur claps. Then we've no time to waste. Let's introduce them to the code. Ah yes. The fabled code of chivalry. Honor. Valor. Mercy. Justice. Unless you're having a bad day, apparently, you soon learn that the Knights of the Round Table are not quite the glittering paragons the legends promised. Sir Lancelot is away, probably on some romantic quest, or possibly just ghosting everyone again. Sir Gaheris is loudly arguing with a kitchen servant about the price of eggs. Sir Bedivere is carving what you're pretty sure is a rude symbol into the wooden table with his dagger. Knightly decorum? Maybe not so much, but they do take swordplay seriously. You're marched to the practice yard again, where a series of mock battles are underway. You're handed a wooden blade that still somehow feels heavy enough to break your wrist, and paired with a knight who claims, "I don't hit hard." He lies. You get smacked across the arm and land flat on your back, watching clouds drift overhead. Sir Percival leans over and offers you a hand. Don't worry. Took me 2 years to learn how not to fall like a sack of grain. Thanks. As you dust yourself off, you start to see how these knights operate. It's not just swordplay. They live and breathe hierarchy, honor, and endless performance. Being a knight here is 20% battle, 40% ego, and 40% arguing over who gets to sit closest to Arthur. You're given chores again. This time, you assist the armory master, a surly man who polishes armor while telling gruesome stories about arrow wounds. He shows you how to check chainmail links, oil a blade, and tell the difference between blood and wine stains. Spoiler, smell it, at your own risk. Meanwhile, rumors swirl. Something is brewing beyond Camelot's walls. You hear talk of skirmishes in the north, bandits in the woods, and a shadowed knight spotted near the river. Some say it's a ghost. Others whisper about Mordred. Historians still argue whether Mordred was Arthur's son, his nephew, or just the embodiment of medieval family trauma. The knights train harder. The council meets longer. Even Arthur seems wearier, rubbing his temples during meetings and muttering, "We're running out of time." That night, you sneak into the stables to escape the noise and just breathe. You find Sir Gawain already there, brushing his horse. He's surprisingly chill and private. "You're doing all right," he says. "For someone who doesn't know which end of a sword is the sharp one." You laugh. "Thanks. That means a lot, especially from someone who hasn't smiled all day." He raises an eyebrow. "Smiling is for poets. I bleed instead." You blink. "Wow. That's a lot." He grins. "Yeah, I heard it in a ballad once. Thought it sounded cool." You sit beside him on a hay bale, watching the horses doze. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots. Gawain sighs. "It's not all glory, you know. Being a knight. People think it's quests and dragons. But it's mostly mud. And grief. And pretending you're not terrified when you are." You nod slowly. "So. Why do it?" He doesn't answer right away. Then, because someone has to. The next morning, you're assigned your own blade. Well, not a real one, more like a beginner's blade. Dull edge. Short grip. But it's yours. The squire beams as he hands it over, like he's giving you a crown. "Name it," he says. All great warriors name their sword. You stare at the hunk of metal. "What if I name it?" Mild regret. He blinks. "That's poetic." Later that day, Sir Kay corners you in the hallway. He's grumpy as ever but less hostile now. "You've lasted longer than I expected," he mutters. "Might be something in you after all." You want to respond, but he's already stomped away, muttering about boiled cabbage. That night, Arthur invites a small group to dine privately. You're included. The meal is still mostly bread and questionable meat, but the conversation is lighter. Merlin appears, finally. He's older than you imagined, bearded and hooded, and smells like smoke and beeswax. He says cryptic things, offers you a pouch of herbs that smell like mint and despair, and disappears before dessert. Guinevere watches you closely as you eat. "You don't belong here," she says softly. "But you don't seem in a rush to leave." You shrug. "I don't know how." She nods. "Most of us don't. We just pretend we do." As you return to your chamber, you hear a group of knights laughing together by the fire. One raises a mug and toasts, to the newcomer, "May their swords stay sharp and their shoes stay dry." You smile. "The sword part? Maybe. The shoes? Already squishy, but hey, you're starting to understand the rules of this strange, chivalric, absurd world, and just maybe. It's starting to understand you, too." You're woken, not gently, by someone yelling about swords and stones, like, actual yelling. From a crowd. Outside, the castle courtyard is packed. People are gathered around a raised platform where, sure enough, a sword is sticking out of a massive chunk of rock like it just fell from the sky and decided to be famous. You shuffle closer, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and ask your squire what's going on. He beams. "It's the anniversary of the choosing. The What now? The day King Arthur pulled Excalibur from the stone. He explains, eyes gleaming. Well, that's one version. Ah. The sword in the stone. The iconic tale. You've seen it in cartoons, read it in books, maybe even thought about trying it at a Renaissance fair. But standing here now, surrounded by wide-eyed peasants and skeptical knights, it all feels a bit less storybook and a bit more PR stunt. Turns out, this sword isn't the Excalibur. It's more of a commemorative rock. A sort of Excalibur experience that gets restaged every year to remind everyone how awesome Arthur is. Tourists, sorry, commoners, come from nearby villages, try their luck, and inevitably fail. This year, someone decided to let the knights have a go for sport. Even Gawain's trying, grinning as he dramatically strains with exaggerated effort, making the crowd laugh. You're pushed forward by the squire. Try it. He whispers. What if you're chosen? Oh no. No. No, no, you look around. Everyone's watching. Arthur raises a brow. Why not? He says, grinning. We could use some entertainment. Wonderful, you step up, place both hands on the worn hilt, and give it a tug. Nothing happens. You wiggle. You grunt. You dramatically fake a hernia. The sword doesn't budge. The crowd claps anyway, good effort. Shouts someone, you stumble back, red-faced. Sir Kay claps you on the back so hard your teeth click. Better than last year's goat, he says, you're not sure if that's comforting. Later, in the hall, you corner Merlin. So what's the real story? He raises a bushy brow. About Excalibur. You nod. Was it really pulled from a stone? He exhales through his nose, long and slow. Depends which version you like. He pours 2 cups of something herbal and strange, then continues. Some say it was a sword in stone. Some say it came from the Lady of the Lake. Others say it was just a regular sword Arthur happened to be holding at the right moment with good lighting and a crowd. You blink. Seriously? He shrugs. Myths grow like moss, slow, sticky, and in all directions. He tells you a fringe tidbit next. One particularly obscure chronicle claims Excalibur was originally forged by fairies in a cave beneath Wales. Quenched in the blood of a swan, and sharpened on the bones of kings. Another source insists it's just a really nice Roman blade that got a glow-up. Historians still argue whether Arthur pulled it from the stone at all, or whether that version was retroactively added centuries later to justify his claim to power. Truth, Merlin says, sipping, is always a few drinks behind the story. That evening, the council meets to discuss border tensions. Some lords are squabbling again, possibly over sheep. Possibly over pride. Possibly over a sheep named Pride. You're not clear. You try to follow the conversation, but it dissolves into overlapping voices and dramatic scroll thumping. One knight quotes the code. Another throws his goblet. Arthur stays mostly silent, watching the room like a man keeping a wildfire in a glass. Eventually, he rises and speaks. Calm. Stern. Brief. Everyone quiets. You realize then, Excalibur or not, Arthur's power doesn't come from the sword. It comes from presence. From the way everyone listens. From the weight in his words. You still don't know if he earned the throne by pulling metal from a rock. But he's definitely holding it now, with or without magical assistance. Later, you wander into the armory, where an old knight is polishing a battered shield. He sees you and nods. Want to know a secret? He says, always. He gestures to the wall, where dozens of swords hang. None of those are special. But the men who held them. Legends. Because people wanted to believe in them. Not the metal. The myth. You glance at a dented blade. So the sword doesn't matter. Oh, it matters. But only because we say it does. As the week rolls on, the sword in the stone festivities continue. There are minstrels singing awful rhyming ballads. Jesters juggling knives. A baker makes a cake shaped like Excalibur, which collapses before lunch. You even get your own ridiculous title for the day, Guest Knight of the Wiggling Grip. Thanks to your failed sword pull. The scribes find this hilarious. Despite the silliness, there's a darker undercurrent. Merlin warns you one night, over a smoky fire and a mug of spiced cider, Excalibur's not just a sword. It's a symbol. If that symbol breaks, what happens? You ask, he doesn't answer. Just stares into the flames like they're whispering something he doesn't like. That night, you dream, you're in a field of fog. The stone is there. So is the sword. But when you pull it, it turns to ash in your hands. And then the world tilts. Cracks. Fades. You wake with a start, a new day. A new round of lessons. Arthur calls you into a private chamber. He's holding Excalibur. The Excalibur, it's heavier than you expected. Intricately worked hilt. Blade that gleams even in shadow. You want to hold it? He asks, you nod, he places it in your hands. It hums, not like a sound, but a feeling, like pressure in your chest, like standing too close to thunder. You look at Arthur. Is it magic? He studies you. Maybe. Or maybe everything we give meaning to becomes magic. You hand it back, hands trembling. You're not from here, he says. But you're part of the story now. Be careful what kind of story you choose to tell. Later, you sit on the ramparts, watching stars blink into being. You think about swords. And myths. And how heavy belief can be. You don't know if Excalibur is real, but you're starting to understand that in Camelot, real is negotiable, and symbols, they cut deeper than any blade. Morning in the castle smells like smoke, damp stone, and, unfortunately, boiled onions. Again. You'd hoped for maybe a change in menu. Some toast. A modest croissant. But no. It's onions, a questionable lump of yesterday's pottage, and that same cup of ale that somehow manages to be both warm and sour. You sit at the long wooden bench in the great hall, watching condensation drip down the stone walls. The hearth roars behind you, but the warmth doesn't quite make it to your seat. A dog wanders under the table, sniffs your boots, and immediately regrets it. You can't blame him. Your boots have been through a lot. A new assignment is posted on the notice wall, a slab of wood where the scribes pin parchment with dull little daggers. Today's duty, accompany Sir Bors to the market district to oversee a shipment of dried fish and incense. Thrilling. Sir Bors is large, jolly, and smells like pine resin. He takes his job seriously, too seriously, given that most of it involves yelling at fishmongers and inspecting spices like they might explode. You walk beside him down Camelot's inner causeway, and he's already halfway through an enthusiastic monologue about cinnamon fraud when you catch a whiff, something off. You wrinkle your nose. Is that cabbage? Bors stops. Sniffs. Then glares toward the main corridor. No. That, he growls, is court perfume. And that, dear listener, is your first true introduction to the royal court. A place that, despite all the noble ideals and shining armor, smells weird. As you near the inner sanctum, the scent becomes unmistakable, a heady swirl of rosewater, lavender, frankincense, damp wool, and, unmistakably, unwashed humanity. No deodorant. No dental hygiene. Lots of cloaks. You're ushered into the throne room. The ceilings loom overhead, vaulted with dark beams carved to look like dragons. Tapestries line the walls, depicting battles, feasts, and one extremely suspicious unicorn. This isn't the yes, the glory of Albion part of the court. This is the people who run the place part, counselors, scribes, minor nobles, and political sycophants who can't seem to smile without showing teeth. You meet the royal steward, who wears 12 rings and speaks entirely in metaphors. You meet Lady Seraphine, who greets you with, "Oh, how quaint," another commoner who smells like destiny. You're not sure if it's a compliment or an insult wrapped in velvet. You also meet an actual jester. Yes, he's got bells on his hat. No, he is not funny. You're placed next to the chamberlain, who insists on giving you a detailed breakdown of court etiquette. Don't look directly at the queen unless spoken to. Don't comment on the meat. Don't touch the falcon. Don't ask about the Duke of Tharn, especially after what happened last spring. Don't, you nod until your neck hurts. Eventually, the queen enters, flanked by ladies-in-waiting who all glide rather than walk. Guinevere, as always, commands the room without raising her voice. She speaks to a noble about tax grain quotas while adjusting the angle of her coronet with regal disinterest. She glances at you once, then immediately returns to her conversation, subtle. Sharp. Terrifying. Arthur arrives late. No one minds. He's in full chainmail, again, and has that look of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He greets the room with a grunt and a nod. A few of the nobles bow too deeply. One even kisses the hem of his cloak. Arthur winces. You swear, he whispers, please don't. The real function of this court, you realize, isn't policy. It's performance. A delicate ecosystem of alliances, rivalries, and theatrical flourishes. A courier rushes in, interrupting the awkward silence with dramatic flair. Message from the northern frontier. Everyone freezes. The scroll is delivered. Arthur reads it. His brow tightens. He turns to Guinevere, murmurs something, then stands. We'll discuss this later. The court is dismissed, but tension hangs in the air like smoke. You exit with Sir Bors, who frowns. Trouble in the north again. The Saxons are moving. Again. You ask, always, he replies. You wander the outer halls afterward, trying to make sense of it. The court was cold. Polished. Impressive, but not inviting. Not even slightly. You feel like a mismatched puzzle piece in a set that doesn't want changing. In a quiet corridor, you stumble upon a scribe's room. Dozens of scrolls, feathers, and bottles of ink cover every surface. A balding man named Theobald peers at you with eyes that haven't blinked in hours. You're the out-of-place one, he says. Not a question, yes. You say, he nods. Want to know the secret of the court? Sure. They all want the kingdom to survive. They just disagree on what that means. And whose version is worth dying for. That night, you join a small dinner hosted by Sir Bedivere, one of the older knights. It's quieter. Fewer theatrics. Just bread, a hearty soup, and good conversation. You'll learn, Bedivere says, that in court, you speak little and listen much. Even if people are wrong. He grins. Especially then. Truth rattles loudest in quiet rooms. You can't sleep that night. The castle hums with whispers. Someone's plotting something. That scroll from the north clearly wasn't good news. And you're starting to suspect your presence in Camelot isn't just coincidence. It might be convenient. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, when you hear a soft knock. It's Merlin. He's holding a candle and a bundle of herbs. Walk with me, he says. You follow him through the winding halls into a hidden stairwell, then out onto a balcony overlooking the sleeping kingdom. Do you feel it? He asks. You nod. Something's coming. He looks out at the stars. The court is brittle. Too many egos. Too many secrets. If it cracks, it'll shatter. He presses a small talisman into your hand. A piece of carved bone with a spiral etched into it. For protection, he says. Or maybe just luck. You look at him. You know why I'm here, don't you? He sighs. No. But the world doesn't send travelers by accident. You clutch the talisman, heart pounding. Camelot's court may sparkle with banners and ceremony, but beneath the surface, there are cracks. Smiling nobles with sharpened tongues. Secrets coiled like snakes in the rafters. You used to think history was just dusty stories and heroic names, but now you're living inside one, and it doesn't smell nearly as nice as the books made it sound. You rise the next morning before the sun, your breath fogging in the air, the castle still swaddled in sleep. Even the ever-noisy roosters haven't started yet. You pull on your tunic, your favorite one now, because it's the least itchy, and wrap your cloak tight against the chill. You're meeting Merlin again. He didn't say why. Just left a note under your bread bowl, Dawn. East Tower. Bring no one, cryptic. Classic Merlin, the East Tower is rarely used, except by pigeons, some moths, and the occasional lovesick squire composing terrible poetry. It spirals high above Camelot, stone steps worn smooth from centuries of footsteps, the air colder with every turn. At the top, you find him standing by a window slit. His robe pulled tight, his eyes scanning the horizon. You're late, he says. I'm freezing, you reply. He tosses you a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, a roll of bread, a dried apple, and a small, smoked fish. Medieval granola bar. You need to learn about the land, Merlin says, pacing the stone floor. You've seen the castle. The court. The surface of things. But you don't understand the roots yet. You nod slowly. So. Field trip. He almost smiles. Exactly. By noon, you're on horseback, trotting out through the castle gates with Merlin riding a mule beside you. A mule, yes, because, in his words, horses are too proud and not nearly paranoid enough. Your destination, the village of Eldwire. A day's ride east, nestled near the old forest. You've heard whispers, strange happenings, sick livestock, people disappearing. No one's quite sure what's real, what's folklore, and what's simply exaggerated boredom. As you ride, the terrain changes. Camelot fades into hills and hedges, the towers shrinking behind you until they're nothing more than dark prongs against the sky. The road turns muddy, trees gather close, and the occasional crow heckles you from a branch. You pass farmers who pause mid-plow to eye you. Children who stop their games to stare. One old woman blesses herself and spits when you wave. You check to make sure it wasn't at Merlin. Nope. Just you look like a curse, Merlin mutters, thanks. You're welcome. By dusk, the village of Eldwire comes into view, if you can call it that. A dozen thatched roofs. A well. Smoke curling from chimneys. But something's wrong. The animals are silent. No children's laughter. Doors shut. Curtains twitch. Merlin ties his mule to a post. Wait here. You do not wait. You follow. Because if this is a horror movie, you're not going to be the one who dies politely off-screen. You wander past shuttered windows and mud-crusted fences. A pig watches you like it knows something you don't. Merlin finally knocks on a weathered door. An old man opens it and immediately drops to one knee. Wizard, he says. Merlin sighs. That's not necessary. I told you last time, no kneeling. The man rises, looking relieved and terrified in equal measure. We didn't think you'd come. Merlin gestures at you. I brought help. The man looks at you. Blinks. It's wearing pants. It's a long story, Merlin mutters. You're led inside. A smoky hearth crackles in the corner. The man, called Wren, explains, crops are dying. A black spot on every leaf. Livestock are restless. People fall ill with fevers and dreams full of whispers. And, this part he barely says above a whisper, something watches from the forest. Merlin's face darkens. How many have gone missing? 3. One just last night. No blood. Just gone. You shiver. Not from the cold. From something else. A pressure. Like the air here is thicker. That night, you stay in the hut. The straw mattress is better than expected. But sleep? Not so much. Around midnight, you hear it. A howl. Not a wolf. Something else. Something too long. Too low. You sit up. So does Merlin. The forest, he says, already pulling on his cloak. You follow him into the night. The moon is bright, casting silver across the path. Every branch looks like it's reaching for you. At the edge of the trees, you stop. There, in the underbrush, something moves. You glimpse fur, or maybe smoke. Eyes. Then gone. Merlin raises a hand. Not tonight. You return to the village in silence. The next morning, you meet the village herbalist, a woman with hands like bark and a laugh like broken twigs. She shows you the blighted crops, the cracked eggs, the well water that smells like copper. This place is poisoned, she says. But not by nature. You glance at Merlin. He's staring at a carved stone near the edge of town. An old shrine. Overgrown. Forgotten. Something's been awakened, he says. A boundary crossed. These things. They don't like being disturbed. He speaks with reverence. Fear, magic. You ask, he nods. Or memory. Same difference here. That night, you join the villagers at the fire. Ren tells stories. Tales of forest spirits, ancient pacts, stones that bleed when touched. You listen, unsure where fact ends and fiction begins. One child points at you. You're the one from the dream, she says. Your heart stutters. What dream? She shrugs. The one where the sky cracks open and the sword sings. Great. That clears it right up. Before dawn, you ride back toward Camelot. The fog is thicker. The air electric. Merlin is quiet. So are you. You've seen the kingdom now, not just the throne, but the roots beneath it. The fear in the villages. The whispers in the woods. The old magic that still pulses in the land's bones. Camelot is not just a castle. It's a center, a stone in a lake of stories, and the ripples are growing. As the towers come into view again, Merlin speaks. The kingdom is changing. And you. He glances at you. You're not immune to it. Neither of you say anything else, but something has shifted, inside you. Outside you, you are part of this place now, and something is watching. You're back at Camelot, but the castle doesn't quite feel the same. Not after Eldwire. Not after the whispers in the forest, or the little girl who dreamed of singing swords and broken skies. The stone walls now seem colder. The shadows in the hallways, longer. You notice things you hadn't before, cracks in the masonry, a tapestry frayed at the corner, a knight muttering to himself as he sharpens a blade that's already gleaming. At breakfast, no one speaks of the north, or the forest, or magic. Instead, they talk about weather, tournaments, and the chancellor's new tunic. It's a deep red, and he keeps smoothing it out like he's afraid someone might touch it with their eyes, but beneath the chatter is tension. Like the room's holding its breath, you're summoned to Arthur's private study after the meal. It's a cozy, book-lined chamber with a desk covered in maps and half-melted candles. Arthur gestures to a chair. You've been beyond the walls, he says, pouring 2 cups of mead. Tell me what you saw. You recount the blight, the villagers, the forest. The eyes. You leave out the part where you definitely screamed. Arthur listens, lips pressed in a thin line. Something is stirring, he says. I can feel it in the way the council argues. In how the land behaves. He leans closer. I want you to join the next diplomatic party. We ride at dawn. West. To the kingdom of Lioness. You blink. Lioness? Isn't that underwater? He chuckles. Only the parts they don't talk about. Historians still argue whether Lioness was a real place or just a legend about a sunken kingdom swallowed by the sea after a single night of storms. But here, it's apparently both real and sending letters. Later, you prepare for the journey. Your squire is far too excited about the opportunity to pack things. He gives you 7 socks. None of them match. You also now own a pair of travel gloves that smell faintly of goat. That night, you can't sleep. Again. So you walk the halls. You find Guinevere in the library, her gown trailing like smoke. She's reading an old volume and sipping something that's definitely not medieval cocoa. You're going to Lioness, she says, without looking up, apparently. Be careful. They're not like us. How so? She closes the book. They remember things we've tried to forget. Dawn comes fast. You mount your horse, who now tolerates you with faint contempt, and ride out with a small party, Sir Gawain, Sir Bedivere, a quiet diplomat named Elric, and 2 soldiers whose names you never catch because they don't talk. The ride takes 3 days. Across moors where mist clings to your boots. Through forests where birds fall silent when you pass. Over bridges that creak in warning, Lioness rises out of the fog like a mirage, stone towers with rounded domes, buildings shaped like waves. The air smells of salt and kelp, and everything gleams like it was recently underwater. The Queen of Lioness is named Isella. She greets you in a silver robe with coral woven into her hair. Her voice is soft, but carries like a spell. She looks at you. The outsider. The echo. You whisper to Gawain, is that good? He shrugs. It's not bad. Lioness is strange. Beautiful, but unrooted. The stone streets are damp. Their scribes write on pressed kelp. Their music sounds like tides and thunder. You learn their history in fragments, a kingdom that nearly drowned. Rebuilt on higher ground, ruled by those who survived the water, the diplomatic talks begin in a round chamber filled with tide pool light. Arthur's envoy speaks of trade routes and mutual defense. Queen Isella listens with half-closed eyes. When it's your turn to speak, she interrupts, do you believe Camelot can survive what's coming? The room stills. I don't know what's coming, you admit. She smiles faintly. Exactly. You're invited to stay in their guest quarters, which are technically carved into cliffs. The walls glisten with salt. The beds are made of woven reeds. It smells perpetually like wet sandals. That night, you dream again, you're walking underwater. The stone towers of Lioness rise around you, but they're crumbling. A shadow moves through the currents, long, slow, watching. You hear your name whispered in a voice made of bubbles. You wake gasping. The queen summons you to her private garden the next day. It's a strange, circular space where plants grow upside down from the ceiling. You sit on smooth stones while she speaks. Your presence ripples through the world, she says. Like something dislodged. Not violent. Just different. You ask what she means. She tells you the old stories, of when the land and the sea made pacts. Of the sword that pierced both. Of a king who ruled not by lineage, but by accident and myth. Of the day Lioness began to drown, and how they survived by forgetting, but forgetting always comes due, she says. Before you leave, she gives you a gift, a ring carved from sea glass. If the tide rises too fast, she says, this might help you breathe. The return to Camelot is slower. Everyone is quiet. Even Gawain, when you arrive, the air feels heavier. Something's changed. The gates are closed tighter. The guards are more alert. And the banners. They're at half-mast. You rush to the hall. The court is silent. Sir Kay meets you in the corridor, eyes bloodshot. There's been an attack, he says. You blink. Where? Not where. Who? Then he tells you, Sir Percival. Gone. Ambushed on a patrol route near the river. No survivors, it doesn't feel real. You just shared a meal with him. Laughed at his impression of a drunk bard, now. Gone. Arthur stands in the center of the great hall, staring at a bloodied sword placed on the table, Excalibur. He looks up. This wasn't just bandits. You nod. It never is anymore. Camelot, once just confusing and dusty, now feels fragile. The tide is coming in, and you're not sure if the kingdom can swim. You sit alone in the chapel that night, wrapped in silence so thick it presses against your skin. Candles flicker on the stone walls. Their flames sway, casting shadows that seem to breathe. You're not even sure how you ended up here. Your feet brought you, maybe, or something inside you needed to feel small in a room meant for whispers. Sir Percival is gone. The news hit like a slap to the face wrapped in iron. He was the funny one. The one who always had a half smile. The one who helped you up that first time you got whacked by a training sword and thought you broke something vital. Now there's just his seat at the round table, sitting empty. No one dares to look at it too long. You don't cry. You don't really know how to. The grief here feels different, quieter. Like a room that's been sealed off, dusty but undisturbed. Merlin appears beside you in the chapel, as he always does, soundless, like a cat that smells like firewood and anxiety. It's begun, he says. You stare straight ahead. The attack? He nods. The first ripple. There will be more. You glance at him. So what now? He doesn't answer. Just reaches into his sleeve and pulls out a folded piece of parchment. Time to look beneath the stones. It's a map. But not one you've seen before, old. Smudged. Lines hand-drawn. Landmarks you don't recognize. There's a forest in the east marked with a crude skull. A circle of standing stones drawn like teeth. And near the bottom, a strange phrase, the place where kings go to break. You frown. Is this a riddle or a destination? Merlin grins. Why not both? That's how you find yourself on horseback again, riding into a region no one talks about and most people pretend doesn't exist. You're with a small group, just Gawain, your squire, and a woman named Elira who says she's a cartographer but carries 3 daggers and never blinks. You ride east. Into the fog. The forest comes quickly. Gnarled trees, their branches twisted like they're reaching towards something long gone. The air smells like wet stone and forgotten secrets. The birds don't sing. I hate this, Gawain mutters. Elira snorts. That's healthy. Stay sharp. The deeper you go, the quieter it becomes. Your horse keeps shying at shadows. Your squire stops talking entirely. You try to hum a tune, something from your world, but it dies in your throat. Eventually, you find it, the standing stones, tall. Black. Covered in lichen and carvings that make your eyes ache to look at. They form a circle, and in the center, there's a depression in the earth. Like something large was buried. Or maybe rose. No one speaks for a long time. Then Elira whispers, this place is older than Camelot. Gawain nods. Older than the old kings. Older than memory. Merlin had said something about the broken foundation of Arthur's kingdom, how legends are built on bones. You're starting to think he wasn't being metaphorical. You step into the circle, nothing happens at first, then the wind rises. Fast. Cold, and the whispers start, voices in languages you don't know. Echoes that brush against your ears and then vanish. You can't tell if they're inside your head or actually swirling around you. You drop to your knees. The wind presses on your back. A voice, faint but clear, says, "You do not belong here." You grit your teeth. Too late. The ground shifts beneath you. Just slightly. A vibration. Like the earth is waking up, then it stops, silence again. Gawain helps you up. What did you hear? You shake your head. Something old. Something angry. He looks around. This place remembers things Camelot forgot. On the way back, Lyra rides beside you. She doesn't speak for most of the journey. Then, "I've been to a lot of strange places. But that one? That place wants something." You glance at her. What? She frowns. A reckoning. When you return to Camelot, things have changed. Arthur is more withdrawn. Guinevere is seen less often. The knights are training harder, but laughing less, and then, of course, there's the dreams. Yours grow worse. Every night, you see the broken sword. The field of ash. A throne made of roots. Sometimes you hear Percival's voice calling from the forest. Sometimes you answer. One morning, you find a crow sitting on your window ledge. It looks at you like it knows your search history. Then it caws once and flies away. You discover, through some light eavesdropping and heavier bribery of kitchen staff, that the court is splitting into factions. Some want to seek peace with distant enemies. Some want war. Some want Arthur to take more power. Others whisper that he's grown too tired to hold the crown at all. Historians still argue whether Camelot fell from invasion, betrayal, or simple decay. From what you're seeing, it's probably all three. One night, at a secret meeting in a half-collapsed tower, Gawain speaks the words everyone's been avoiding. "We might lose everything." No one disagrees. He turns to you. "You're not from here. You don't owe this place anything. Why are you still here?" You take a long breath, "Because it matters." He nods once. "Then help us keep it standing." That week, you train harder than ever. Your sword, mild regret, isn't just a decoration anymore. You learn the rhythms of a fight. How to breathe, where to step, how to survive. Your squire makes you a practice dummy. It looks vaguely like Sir Kay. That's probably not a coincidence, and still, every night, the dreams return. One dream ends differently. You stand at the edge of a battlefield. The sky is blood orange. Excalibur lies at your feet. And Arthur is walking away. You bend to pick up the sword, and wake up with your hand outstretched. When you look at your palm, there's dirt under your fingernails. You didn't leave your chamber, did you? Camelot is cracking. Slowly. But cracks don't heal themselves. Something must rise, or something must fall. You wake to thunder. Not the sky kind, the political kind. The castle is vibrating with noise. People running. Shouting. A trumpet somewhere is trying its best, but mostly sounds like someone choking on soup. You stumble into your boots and nearly knock over a chambermaid who's sprinting in the opposite direction holding a tray of pears. What's going on? You yell. She shouts back. The northern lords are here early. Right. Them. You've heard of these guys. Mostly in the context of "oh no, they're coming." You sprint to the council chamber, still tying your belt, and arrive just as the doors slam open and in strides Lord Morden of the Iron Hills, broad, sour-faced, and dressed like someone who sleeps in chainmail to save time. Behind him is Lord Ethric of the Fenlands, who looks like a frog that found a sword. And lastly, Lady Bren, tall, silent, and wrapped in a cloak made of actual raven feathers. She doesn't blink. At all. They enter without bowing. That's how you know it's serious. Or suicidal, Arthur remains seated, one hand on the hilt of Excalibur. The atmosphere could curdle milk. Lord Morden gets right to the point. We want the crown to declare emergency powers. Arthur raises an eyebrow. To do what, exactly? Preemptive mobilization. Mandatory levies. Blockades on trade with Lyonesse. And a culling of unregulated magic. You feel every hair on your neck rise, Arthur answers slowly. So. You want me to turn Camelot into a fortress? Based on rumors. The forest has teeth, Morden growls. We've seen them. You have an outsider here, mucking with cursed stones. You know the omens. Bren finally speaks. Her voice is quiet, flat. If you won't act, we will. That phrase. That's the kind of phrase people say right before civil wars. You glance at Merlin. He's watching them, eyes half-lidded, fingers twitching like he's playing chess with ghosts. The meeting ends without a resolution. Everyone leaves angry. That's usually not a good sign. Afterward, Arthur pulls you aside. Ride to the southern coast, he says. Check the garrisons. See if they're loyal. You blink. You want me to do that? You're the only one they won't suspect of being part of a faction. He places a hand on your shoulder. They don't know what you are. That's power. Use it. You ride out the next morning, alone but carrying a royal seal. The southern roads are warmer, lined with hawthorn and birdsong. It almost feels peaceful, if not for the occasional burned-out homestead or cluster of spears driven into the ground like warning signs. The first garrison is in a place called Cradle Haven. Sounds gentle. It is not. The captain there is a woman named Marwen. With eyes like gravel and a sword she calls persuasion. She eyes your seal, reads Arthur's orders, then leans close. If this kingdom falls, she says, don't come running to us expecting safety. We'll look after our own. The next outpost is friendlier. A knight named Thorn, young, idealistic, and convinced chivalry can still save the world. He serves Camelot with a quiet loyalty. Whatever comes, he says, will stand with Arthur. Even if it's the end. The third outpost is abandoned. You arrive to find broken gates, blood stains, and no bodies. Just silence. And scratch marks on the stone. Deep ones, something dragged its way in, or out. You don't stay long. You return to Camelot after a week on the road. Mud-caked, bone-tired, and about 6 meals behind. The moment you step inside the castle walls, you feel it. Something's shifted again, not politically. Not magically. Personally, your room has been moved. Your squire says it was orders from above. Your training schedule is gone. You're no longer listed in the regular drills. You've been sidelined. You find Merlin in the garden, talking to a tree. Yes, literally. You wait patiently while he finishes arguing with it, then catch him up. The southern garrisons are splintered, you say. Some loyal. Some not. One's just gone. He nods. It begins. You fold your arms. Everyone keeps saying that. What begins? He sighs. The breaking. Camelot is built on hope. Faith. Stories. And when people stop believing, they look for something else. Exactly. He hands you a scroll. This is where the next piece lies. It's a prophecy, written in verse. Because of course it is, when the sword is still and the stars are weeping, a stranger's step shall mark the keeping. If dragon's breath should wake the flame, the blood of kings shall lose its name. You stare at it. So, translation, I'm involved, a dragon might show up. And the royal family is doomed? Basically, Merlin says. Try not to die. Thanks. That helps. Back inside, Guinevere intercepts you in the corridor. Her eyes are tired. Not the I didn't sleep kind. The I've been holding a kingdom together with charm and side-eye kind. She places something in your hand, a small pendant, shaped like a flame. For when you don't know who to trust. Then she's gone, you're not sure if it's protection or a test. That evening, the council meets again. Tensions are boiling. Morden is openly accusing Merlin of manipulating Arthur. Bran is silent, but watching everyone like she's already made a list. Arthur looks older. Not aged, heavier. He slams his fist on the table. Enough. We either stand together, or we fall alone. Silence, then Morden says it, then perhaps it's time for a new king. Everyone freezes, Guinevere's eyes narrow, Arthur stands. Not with rage. Not with fear. With resignation. Then try, he says. That night, the sky turns red, literally. You wake to shouts. People pointing. The moon is ringed in blood. Smoke rises from the eastern hills, you race to the ramparts. Something's burning. A beacon, maybe. Or a village. Arthur stands beside you. Excalibur in hand. This is the turning point, he says quietly. And we are not ready. You glance at him. Then what do we do? He looks at you. We endure. Below, the castle gates creak open. Riders are leaving. Others are arriving, the pieces are moving, and you're no longer just watching the story, you're part of it, whether you survive it, well. That's another prophecy entirely. You no longer pretend this is just a bizarre dream. You've stopped wondering when, or if, you'll wake up. This isn't a lucid detour through medieval cosplay. This is Camelot, and things are unraveling faster than a cursed tapestry in a hurricane. The morning after the red moon, the castle is buzzing with rumors. Some say the sky was warning of a royal death. Others whisper that the dragon under the mountain has begun to stir. You're not even sure there's supposed to be a dragon under a mountain, but no one seems particularly shocked. Just vaguely resigned, you meet Merlin in the lower garden. He's muttering to a beetle. Probably for a good reason. What now? You ask. He gestures at the sky. Now we ride for the lake. You blink. The lake? Yes, he says. The lady has been silent for too long. You don't ask which lady. You've been around long enough to know that, in this world, vague titles often come with very sharp consequences, so you prepare. You're told to pack lightly, dress warmly, and bring nothing made of iron just in case. You ask in case of what? And are told, in case you want to return. Comforting. By mid-morning, you ride with Merlin, Guinevere, and a knight you haven't met before, Sir Caldus, who wears 3 swords and speaks like he's narrating an epic even when asking for water. The journey to the lake is strange. The land begins to bend. Not physically, metaphysically. Trees grow at odd angles. The wind carries snatches of conversations you didn't hear. A deer walks across your path and bows. You bow back. It seems rude not to. As you crest a hill, you see it, the lake, still. Mirror-like. Deep blue without a single ripple, and in the center, an island, no boats. No bridges. Guinevere steps forward and whispers something you don't catch. A moment later, a shape begins to rise from the water. A small skiff, made of woven reeds and water lilies, emerges silently. Well, says Merlin. She does remember you. The boat takes you and Guinevere, drifting without oars. You try not to fidget. Or breathe. Or sneeze. As you approach the island, you realize it's not entirely land. It's part garden, part illusion. The trees sway even without wind. Flowers bloom in colors you don't have names for, and then she appears, the lady of the lake. She's not what you expect. No glittering robe. No hovering with dramatic backlighting. Just stillness. Her face is calm, expression unreadable, and her eyes shimmer like reflections you can't quite place. You've brought the outsider, she says to Guinevere. I had no choice, Guinevere replies. You always have a choice, the lady says gently. Then she looks at you. You don't belong here, she says, you sigh. Yes, I've heard that before. But, she continues, that is why you must stay. You want to ask her what that means, but she turns and walks deeper into the island. You follow, because what else do you do when an immortal semi-divine being gives you an unsolicited quest? She shows you the pool of echoes. A still basin of water where people can see truths they refuse to say aloud. You look in, you see Camelot. Cracked. Burning. Arthur on his knees. And yourself, not dead, but changed. Holding something heavy, you back away. Is that the future? She shakes her head. It is a future. Unless something breaks. She tells you the land is alive. That magic is not a tool but a memory. That the kingdoms, Camelot, Lyonesse, Eldwire, are all built on layers of forgetting. And now, the past is remembering itself. History doesn't sleep, she says. It just waits. Before you go, she hands you a vial of clear liquid. This will protect you from the first lie. You're about to ask what the first lie is, but then you're back in the boat, drifting toward the shore. Merlin is waiting. Did she give you something? You nod, she always does, he mutters. Did you? You ask, she doesn't answer. Back at Camelot, things are worse. The northern lords have left the castle. Not departed, withdrawn. Their banners are gone. Their messengers no longer report in. The word secession is spoken for the first time. Quietly. Like a curse, Arthur calls a meeting of the Round Table. Every knight attends. Even Lancelot, who's been conveniently absent for weeks, returns looking windblown and morally complicated. They argue over everything. Strategy. Morality. Prophecy. Whether they should strike first or build walls. Whether magic should be bound or welcomed. And then Arthur does something no one expects. He turns to you. What do you think we should do? You feel every eye on you. Gawain. Kay. Bedivere. Lancelot. Even Guinevere leans forward slightly, and you speak. You tell them what you saw in Eldwire. In Lyonesse. In the Standing Stones. You speak not as a knight, or a noble, or a prophet, but as someone who stumbled in from another world, who sees things with fresh eyes. You say, you can't win by being what you were. You have to become something new. Silence, then, slowly, Lancelot nods. The outsider's right. That's how you end up leading a new kind of mission. Not war. Not peace. Something in between, an envoy. A whisper. A warning. You and a handful of others, Gawain, Elira, a scribe named Maeve who talks to birds, are tasked with visiting the borderlands. Talking to the minor lords. The wandering tribes. The druids. The forgotten ones. Your goal, remind them that Camelot still stands, that it can change, the journey is long. Each stop brings something new, a village where people worship stars and refuse to speak under the moon, a keep ruled by a child who claims to dream the future, a monastery that no longer follows the church, but the wind. At every turn, you see what Camelot doesn't. The world has already moved on. It's shifting. Changing. And Camelot must follow, or vanish. You return weeks later, travel-worn and fire-tempered. Arthur greets you personally. His grip on Excalibur is firmer now. Not desperate. Steady. What did you learn? He asks. You hand him a scroll filled with names, pledges, fears, and one poem that might be a curse. He reads it, then looks at you. Good, he says. Because the storm is here. And outside, the first siege horn sounds. The horn echoes through the valley like some ancient beast has stirred from slumber, yawning its war cry across the hills. Inside Camelot's walls, everything shifts. People drop what they're doing. Bakers abandon their loaves. Scribes spill ink. Knights run, never a good sign when people in armor are running. The siege has begun. You climb to the ramparts with Gawain. Below, a wave of movement spreads across the horizon. Not just an army. A coalition, northern banners flap, Morden's twisted oak. The black sun of the fenlands. Even a few you don't recognize. Some of them look old. Like pre-Camelot old, the castle's defenders brace. Oil is heated. Arrows are stacked in barrels. The courtyards become training grounds. And for the first time, the chapel is full, because fear makes believers out of everyone. Arthur doesn't make a speech. He just walks the battlements. Quiet, calm. He looks at you and says only, "Stay alive. Please." So, no pressure. Merlin retreats to the lower tower, his workshop, a swirling mess of scrolls, crystals, bones, possibly decorative, and a large bowl of apples that no one has touched in months. He's muttering about ley lines and blood sigils, trying to anchor the kingdom's memory. You don't ask. You just hand him the weird fern the Lady of the Lake told you to collect from the Monastery of Whispering Stones. He blinks. You actually got it? I nearly lost a leg. He nods approvingly. Good. That means it's working. Whatever it is, you hope it helps. Back in the yard, your squire has turned your travel cloak into a sort of battle poncho. It's weirdly comforting. Gawain lends you his backup sword. Mild regret has earned semi-retirement. This new one, it's called Later Consequences. You get the sense someone in the forge has a wicked sense of humor. At sunset, the enemy sends a messenger. They don't bother with diplomacy. Just a scroll tied to a spear, hurled over the wall like a passive-aggressive group chat exit. Arthur reads it. Then burns it. Night falls, and the siege begins in earnest. Flaming arrows, battering rams, curses whispered into the dark, carried on wind that smells wrong. You fight. Not heroically. Not perfectly. But real. Dirty. Loud. You block. You duck. You scream. You survive. Your squire takes out a man twice his size by hitting him with a tray of soup. There's a reason you keep him around. Somewhere in the chaos, you see Bren. She's on the enemy's side. But she doesn't attack. She just watches. Like she's taking notes. You meet Gawain in the corridor between skirmishes. He's bleeding from his arm, smiling like a lunatic. Is this what destiny feels like? He asks. You answer, feels more like indigestion. Then a boom shakes the ground, the eastern gate collapses, enemy soldiers flood in, and you're pulled into the kind of fight you see in bad dreams and better movies. You hold the line. Because there's nothing else to hold, Merlin appears beside you, out of nowhere, of course, and shouts, "The ward is failing." You shout back, "We had a ward." He shoves a rune into your hand. Take this to the highest tower. Place it on the old starstone. Why me? Because you don't belong, remember. The magic won't reject you. You run, up endless stairs. Past wounded knights. Past fire and broken glass, to the top, there, on the roof, the starstone waits. Ancient, pulsing faintly, you slam the rune into its center, the sky ripples, time stutters, you see everything, the first king. The wars. The dragon. The lady. The building of Camelot. The choice, you fall to your knees, and then it's gone, the magic pulses outward like a shockwave, down below, enemy soldiers stop mid-charge, the air pushes them back, just slightly. Just enough, Arthur and his knights rally. The line holds. At dawn, the battle ends, the enemy retreats, shaken, scattered, afraid, the cost is high. Bodies in the yard. Smoke curling from shattered towers, but Camelot stands, just barely. You're pulled from the rubble by Elira, who looks like she's been through 10 kinds of hell and still won a beauty pageant. You're alive, she mutters. Shame. I owe someone 10 silver. You laugh. Or cry. It's hard to tell. Arthur addresses the survivors from the battlements. His voice is raw but steady. We are still here, he says. And that is enough for now. You go to the chapel later. Sit beside what's left of the window. Guinevere finds you there. Sits beside you. Did you see it? She asks. You nod. Everything. She doesn't ask for details, just says, it's coming again. And you believe her, because even though you held the line, even though you placed the rune, even though Camelot endured, something woke up, and now, it's watching. Merlin tells you this was the first wave. That prophecy doesn't stop with survival, you're part of it now, he says. Like a stone thrown into water. You can't control the ripples. You nod, then ask, what happens next? He shrugs. We wait. We train. We hope. You don't sleep that night, you dream instead, of a dark throne rising from ash, of a crown that burns, and of your own face, reflected in still water, slowly turning into someone you no longer recognize. You've survived your first siege. Congratulations. You're bruised, tired, and probably emotionally compromised, but alive. Unfortunately, Camelot is not celebrating. The air is too heavy for joy. Too many empty chairs. Too many people pretending not to glance at them. The great hall has become a triage center. Cots line the walls. Knights and squires alike lie wounded, tended to by healers with red-streaked aprons and unblinking eyes. You step through the room carefully, half expecting someone to reach out and grab your ankle, whispering your name in that whispery horror movie way. Merlin calls it the breathing after the scream. He's not wrong. Arthur, ever the king, hides his weariness behind steel and silence. He's taken to walking alone, visiting the injured, speaking softly. It's the kind of leadership you wish more kings had, though it's costing him more than anyone realizes, except Guinevere. She watches him with eyes like someone counting minutes before a storm. You try to rest, but sleep comes jagged. Your dreams are no longer cinematic. They're flashes. Faces. Swords. Ash. A voice, maybe yours, maybe not, whispering, not yet. Not yet. You start training again. Not because you want to be a warrior, but because standing still feels worse than falling. Gawain spars with you daily. He's patient, funny, and shockingly good at getting you to forget you're terrified. You're not bad. He says one morning, wiping sweat from his brow. You fight like someone who's read about it but didn't skip leg day. You take it as a compliment. Then, the real surprise comes. A messenger arrives from Lyonesse, a peace envoy. Queen Isella has requested a summit in Camelot. This is not normal. Lyonesse doesn't send diplomats. They send riddles, illusions, and the occasional warning carved into kelp scrolls. For them to initiate diplomacy. Something's changed. You attend a council meeting where the matter is discussed. Arthur leans back in his chair. What would you all advise? Morden, now grudgingly back inside the walls, says, a trap. Gawain says, an opportunity. Merlin says, a mirror. You say, we need to hear them. The world's shifting. We can't afford to blink. So the summit is planned, 3 days from now. In the meantime, strange signs increase. Birds flock in spirals over the castle, never landing. The wells run colder than usual. and twice, you swear the statues in the garden turned to look at you. Historians still argue whether Camelot's fall was due to outside enemies or a slow internal rot. But what you're seeing feels like both. Like reality's seams are fraying, and something is watching from the other side, the night before the summit. You find Guinevere alone in the throne room. She's standing where Arthur usually does. I sometimes wonder, she says, if this kingdom was ever real. Or just a dream strong enough to survive. You don't reply. She hands you something wrapped in silk. Inside is a small dagger, curved, ancient. Use it only if you have to, she says. It remembers things better left buried. Again, comforting, the delegation from Lyonesse arrives at dawn, their banners ripple like water. Their armor shines like coral. Isella dismounts first, calm as ever, her eyes scanning every stone in the courtyard. Arthur greets her formally. No kiss on the hand. Just a slight bow. She returns it. The summit begins in the Hall of Leaves. Where even the ceiling is alive, ivy creeping across old beams like veins. Isella wastes no time. There is something beneath your castle, she says. Something that was never meant to wake. Arthur folds his arms. We've heard this before. She shakes her head. You've dreamed it before. But now it dreams back. She pulls a crystal from her sleeve and tosses it onto the table. It glows, revealing an image, blurry, shifting. A throne made of roots. A figure seated. Crownless. Faceless, it calls itself the king below, she says. And it wants what Arthur holds. Everyone goes still. Merlin stares hard at the image. Impossible. That name was lost in the sundering. You speak without thinking. Then how do I know it? Everyone turns to you. Isella nods slowly. Because you were meant to. You are not here by mistake. Later, when the summit breaks for rest, you sit with her in the garden. You've seen it, she says. In dreams. In echoes. Yes. It's not coming for Arthur. It's coming for the story of Arthur. You frown. What's the difference? She looks at you. Only everything. That night, the castle shakes, literally, a tremor rolls through the foundation. Statues fall. Walls crack, you race with Merlin to the tower. He's pale. Sweating, the starstone is bleeding. He says, sure enough, the great stone is cracked. Black lines running through it like veins. Energy pulses, wrong, erratic, hungry. I tried to anchor the kingdom, he says, but something is unmooring it faster than we can patch. You ask the only question left, what do we do? He hands you a book. Old. Bound in stitched hide. The title reads, The Names of the End. We find its name, he says. Before it finds ours. And below, deep in the earth, something begins to climb. It begins with a whisper. You wake in the middle of the night, heart thudding like it's trying to escape your chest. You're not sure what stirred you. No alarms. No thunder. No screaming. Just a whisper. A voice saying your name, not shouting. Not commanding. Just calling. You sit up, half expecting to see Merlin in the corner lecturing a squirrel. But your chamber is empty. Still, then you hear it again, come below, you grab your sword, later consequences, still warm from the hearth, and a cloak. You don't alert the guards. You don't even bother with shoes. Something about this feels, outside the rules, the halls are empty. Too empty. Even at night, there's usually a bard snoring or someone sneaking a pastry. But tonight, the castle holds its breath. You descend. Down past the kitchens. Past the wine cellar. Past the bones of old kings no one remembers. There's a door you've never seen before, of course there is. it's small, made of petrified wood, and pulsing slightly. Like it's breathing, you place your hand on it, and it opens inward, not on hinges, but like a wound reopening. Beyond it, a staircase. You descend, the air changes. Denser. Sharper. Smells like salt and smoke and memories you didn't make. At the bottom, a cavern. Massive. Lit by no flame, yet you can see. The walls are etched with carvings older than language. Symbols that ache in your teeth when you look too long. And in the center, a throne, not Arthur's. Not gold or jeweled. This one is made of roots. Bones. Stone worn by time and regret, and seated upon it, nothing, but the air around it hums like something is just out of sight. You step closer. And that's when the voice returns. You are the crack in the tale, you freeze, you are the question the story never asked. Then, suddenly, images flood your mind, not memories. Possibilities. You see yourself wearing the crown, you see Arthur dead at your feet. You see Camelot reborn, not as a castle, but a myth, twisted and rebranded, ruled by something that wears your shape but not your soul. You stumble back, and something laughs. You brought the change. You woke the ending, then it's gone. You collapse, panting, heart screaming inside your chest. Above you, faintly, footsteps. You scramble back up the stairs. Into the castle. Into the hallway, and there stands Merlin. He looks furious. You went without protection. You didn't stop me. I couldn't, he growls. The door answers to it now. You're trembling. What was that? He hesitates. Some call it the king below. Some call it the root heart. Some say it's what came before the first sword was ever drawn. You swallow. And what does it want? He looks at you, finally, a rewrite. That day, Arthur gathers the knights, you tell them everything. The door. The voice. The throne. Lancelot leans back in his chair. So, our enemy is a metaphor with ambitions. Kay snorts. Just like our taxes. But no one is really laughing, because you've all felt it. Camelot isn't just under siege by armies, it's under siege by narrative rot, the kind of unraveling where old myths snap like dead branches. Where heroes start doubting themselves. Where villains become justified. Historians still argue whether the legend of Camelot collapsed under pressure or simply evolved into something else. You're now living the transition. Merlin takes you aside. There's a ritual, he says. Old. Dangerous. Forbidden in 6 kingdoms. And possibly invented by a drunk goat, but that part's unclear. You nod slowly. Perfect. Go on. It allows you to challenge the narrative. What does that mean? You stand in front of it, he says. And you choose. You name what stays and what ends. You blink. That's it. You'll probably die. Ah. He sighs. But if you don't, you might just save the kingdom. So of course, you say yes. The ritual requires 3 things, an object of memory, an oath of sacrifice, a witness who remembers the world before. You gather them, your object. The pendant Guinevere gave you, the one shaped like flame, your oath. Spoken in the Hall of Leaves before every night. You vow to keep truth in the story, no matter the cost, your witness. A child named Nym, born mute, who draws dreams no one tells her about. She sketches Camelot like it used to be. She hands you a picture of a tree with a sword in its roots. Perfect. The ritual begins beneath the chapel. Circle of salt. Circle of iron. Circle of story. Merlin chants. Gawain guards. Guinevere watches from the shadows. You step into the center. And the world bends. You are not here. You are between. The voice returns. Name your truth. You speak. Camelot is not perfect. But it is worth saving. Not for its kings. For its people. For the child who still believes in knights. For the baker who keeps feeding the hungry. For the squire who cried when his horse was wounded. For the friends I didn't mean to make. For the hope I didn't know I carried. Silence, then, and what do you give in return? You hesitate. Then, my part in the ending. My future. My peace. If the story goes on, it won't include me. The world shakes, and the throne, yes, the root throne, appears before you, you touch it, and something screams, not in pain. In rage, you've denied it the rewrite, you've chosen the original myth, messy and all, the kingdom holds, the door in the cellar seals, the air clears, and you collapse, they find you 2 days later. Pale. Breathing. Changed, Arthur sits beside your bed, you did something I couldn't, he says, you chose to stay mortal. You smile weakly. Well, immortality didn't come with dental. He laughs. Full. Honest. First time in weeks, Merlin returns with news, the ley lines have quieted. The door is sealed. The root has gone to sleep. For now, Camelot is not saved. Not forever. Not completely, but it's here, still, and so are you. Recovery in Camelot is a quiet, cautious affair, not everyone survived the siege. Some wounds don't close, and some names aren't whispered anymore. But the castle begins to breathe again. Meals are cooked. Walls are patched. A bard strums a half-tuned lute in the courtyard without being told to shut up, even the wind feels gentler. Less like a warning, you're still healing. Physically, you're a bit of a mess, bruises in places you didn't know could bruise. But mentally, that's murkier. You've seen a piece of the story that wasn't meant to be read, and now every shadow feels like a footnote, you walk the castle grounds more now. Not for patrol. Just to remember why you stayed, the blacksmith's daughter is forging her first blade. She names it Curiosity, the cook's apprentice has started a midnight soup club for insomniacs, Gawain teaches kids how to fall without breaking anything, mostly, life, in all its awkward, hopeful defiance, continues. One morning, you wake to a folded note tucked under your door, it's time. The circle meets tonight. Bring no sword. You recognize Merlin's handwriting immediately. And the lack of signature is, classic him, that night, you follow a torchlit path to a hidden chamber beneath the west tower, a room even the oldest maps forgot, inside, a stone circle. 12 figures in hooded cloaks, no chanting. No drama. Just quiet purpose, this is the circle of the first memory. A group older than Camelot itself. Keepers of the kingdom's hidden truths. Supposedly extinct. Obviously not, Merlin nods to you, you are now part of the memory. They explain, Camelot isn't just a place. It's a container for something larger. Not magic. Not prophecy. Possibility, as long as the kingdom survives, so does the idea that humans can be more than war and greed. That we can build something better, but that idea has enemies. Always has. Always will, the king below wasn't a fluke. He was the latest echo, and there will be others. Your role now isn't to fight them. It's to remember, to anchor the myth. You're still reeling from that when Guinevere corners you near the stables. You're leaving soon, aren't you? You blink. I hadn't really, she hands you a map. Handmade. Ink still drying, this leads to a village that doesn't exist on charts, she says. They remember the old words. The deeper ones. Start there. You nod, why help me? You ask, she leans in. Because this place only survives if people like you keep telling its story. The next morning, you pack. Lightly, as usual. Just your cloak, later consequences, the flame pendant, and that weird little snack cake the baker swears is good luck. Arthur meets you at the gate. No armor. No crown. Just him. You're not running from Camelot, he says. You're walking toward it. That's the difference. You smile. I don't suppose I'll find a Starbucks out there. He raises an eyebrow. I don't suppose you'll find anything so merciful. You ride out alone, for now, but it doesn't take long before you're joined. First Gawain. Figured you'd need someone to carry your ego. Then Elira. You'd get lost without someone pointing out your bad decisions. Even NYM, the dream-drawing child, joins, because she woke up and said, "You'll need a witness." And then, one evening, on a ridge overlooking a lake you've never seen before, a figure emerges from the mist, Queen Isella. She doesn't speak right away. Just hands you a small scroll, inside, a single phrase, "What is remembered, lives." And beneath that, your name. You keep traveling. Not in circles. In spirals. Each village brings a new version of Camelot's tale. Some remember Arthur as a storm. Some remember him as a star. Some think Guinevere became a wolf. Some say Merlin turned into a tree. But you are always the same, the one who wasn't supposed to be there, and who changed the ending. One night, by firelight, a child asks you if the king below was real. You hesitate. Then say, "Only if we forget he was." Because that's the truth. This kingdom, this story, it only survives if it's told, not perfectly. Not always kindly. But honestly, with the cracks, the doubts, the ugly parts and the golden ones, you don't know where the road leads, you just know you're walking it with open eyes, because Camelot is not just a castle, it's an idea, and someone has to carry it forward. Might as well be you. Weeks pass. Maybe months. Time moves differently now, not faster or slower, just stranger. You don't keep a calendar anymore. The sun and stars are your clock, and your footsteps are the measure of your days. You and your odd little company, Gawain, Elira, NYM, and the occasional goose that insists on following you, travel the old roads. The really old ones. Paths carved before Camelot was even a whispered promise. You visit ruins that shouldn't exist. Temples shaped like questions. Forests where the trees lean in to listen. Villages where people speak a dialect that hums in your bones. Everywhere you go, the legend of Camelot is different. In one place, Arthur is remembered not as a king but as a gardener, planting peace in bloody soil. In another, Excalibur isn't a sword but a song sung only during thunderstorms. You start to realize something. The myth isn't fading. It's adapting. Shifting to survive, like a good story always does, and somehow, you're its librarian. Its bard. Its walking contradiction. People recognize you now, not by name, but by role. They say, "You're the one who came after the end." You never correct them. Because, well, they're right, but with recognition comes responsibility. You're asked to settle disputes, to bless harvests, to speak at funerals. It's absurd. You're still the same person who used to trip over your own boots. Who once tried to open a medieval door by saying "Open Sesame." But you've learned to say things slowly. To listen first. To leave places a little better than you found them. One evening, you camp in a valley blanketed by stars. NYM draws silently in her sketchbook. Gawain roasts something he swears isn't rat. Elira polishes her dagger, eyes on the horizon. You sit quietly. And then, from behind you, a voice, "I've been looking for you." You spin. It's Bren. She looks tired. Older. Not in years, in choices. She doesn't draw her blade. Neither do you. She sits across from you. "The king below still stirs," she says. "He's quieter now. But dreams don't die." You nod. "I know." She stares into the fire. "You broke the pattern. That should be impossible." You shrug. "Well, so is time travel. but here I am. A smile. Brief. Gone, then she says something unexpected, I want to help. Your companions bristle. Even the goose honks suspiciously, but you say, why? Because the story's not done, she says. And I'd rather be part of it than its footnote. So Bren joins you. And the road grows stranger, you follow a trail of disappearances to a mountain village that isn't there anymore. Only ashes, you find a cave where the wind speaks in broken nursery rhymes. You battle a creature made entirely of names, forgotten ones, and through it all, you begin to understand something vital. This isn't about Arthur anymore. Or Guinevere. Or Excalibur, it's about what we choose to carry forward. The world is rebuilding itself from its own myth, and you, strange visitor from a distant timeline, are its archivist. Its editor. Its reluctant protagonist. Historians still argue whether myths shape people, or people shape myths. But in your case, the answer is clear, both. You reach the coast one day, not the happy, breezy kind. This is the edge of the known world, cliffs that drop into mist. A sea that swallows stars. There's a village here. The last one, the people greet you as if expected. A woman with cloud-colored eyes hands you a folded cloak. You'll need it, she says. It rains inside the dream. You spend the night there, and at dawn, you climb the last hill. At the top is an arch, simple. Stone. Ancient, they call it the Gate of Returning, not because you come back, but because you remember who you were before you forgot. You step through, and for a moment, everything goes quiet, no wind. No breath, just you, and the story. You see Camelot, every version of it. The shining castle. The flawed court. The bickering knights. The aching choices. You see Arthur laughing in the field, Guinevere riding into a storm, Merlin turning into starlight, and you, always just on the edge. Watching. Helping. Becoming, then you return, not in time, in truth, back at the village. NYM hands you her sketchbook. The last page shows you, standing at the gate, a star in your chest. You're part of it now, she says. You nod, because you finally believe it. You are not an outsider anymore. You are the teller, the memory, the crack where the light got in. You remain in the coastal village for longer than you intended. Not because you lack the strength to leave, although the ache in your bones does suggest some weariness, but because something deeper urges you to stay. There is a quiet here, a rhythm to the place that seems to answer a part of you that never knew it was asking. This is not a destination you had planned to reach, but now that you're here, something tells you this is where stories decide to slow down and breathe. The villagers accept you without fanfare or suspicion. They do not prod or pry. They simply make space for you, in the way of people who have long known that strangers often carry the best tales. You are folded into their routines without ceremony. You help mend fishing nets, though your knots are clumsy and your fingers are more used to gripping swords than twine. Still, they let you try. Gawain, determined as always, builds a bench that ends up slightly off-kilter, its legs uneven, but no one minds. Elira, whose blade once flashed like lightning in the battlefield, now patiently teaches swordplay to a group of loud, barefoot children who wield sticks with utter abandon and delight. NYM, ever restless, paints the cliffside in brilliant colors that defy the natural world, and the village elders, after a moment of silence, declare it sacred graffiti, as though prophecy itself is written in pigment. Even Bren, who once carried the weight of fire and fury behind her eyes, begins to soften. You spot her one morning, bent over with laughter as she teaches the village goose to fetch stones from the beach. The goose, for its part, never truly succeeds. It waddles about in confusion, dropping pebbles far from where they belong. But none of that matters. The joy is in the trying. The lesson is in the laughter, and you begin to write. Not with the flourish of courtly letters, not for kings or councils or historians. Just for yourself. You fill small pages with simple lines. Fragments. Thoughts. Half-poems and remembered dialogue. The story of what took place. The path you walked. The dangers that loomed and the companions who stood beside you. The things that almost were lost. The things that might still be found. You write it all. Especially the parts that hurt. The ones you once tried to forget. Because now, you understand something that took a long time to learn. Camelot was never about perfection. It was never meant to be a flawless place of polished stone and unbroken vows. Camelot survives not because it never cracked, but because someone chooses to remember it anyway. Memory is what saves it. Not myth. Not marble. Memory. One fog-thick evening, you take the winding path up the cliffs alone. The village quiets behind you. The only sound is your own breath and the rhythmic hush of waves below. The wind greets you at the summit, not harsh, but soft. It brushes your cheeks like a lullaby with no words, a melody carried by time itself. There, at the top of the world, you find a cairn, a carefully stacked collection of stones. Someone came before. Someone stood where you now stand. You reach down and add one more stone to the pile. Not as a tribute. Not as a shrine. But as a bookmark. A marker to say, I was here. I listened. I remembered. Then you sit, you close your eyes, and you listen again, to the crash and retreat of the ocean against the shore. To the faint whisper of stories carried in the sea spray. To the deep, slow breath of the world turning, not for you, but with you. And in that stillness, in that endless rhythm of water and sky, something settles inside you. A truth not shouted, but laid gently at your feet. You were never meant to return to the place you once called home, because you are already home. You are not bound by a single roof or a single name. Wherever the legend finds its way, wherever someone dares to hope, to fight, to believe in something greater than themselves, that is where you are. That is where you live. You are not a final chapter. You are the turning of the page. You are the hand that keeps writing, so when the messenger appears one morning, pale from his ride, his breathing ragged, his hand trembling as he offers a sealed parchment marked with Arthur's sigil, you do not recoil. You do not hesitate, you take the letter, you read the words inked inside, Camelot calls again, and you smile, because legends are never truly gone. They do not vanish. They do not sleep forever. They wait, quietly, patiently, tucked into the corners of forgotten songs and fading maps. And when the time is right, when the world needs reminding, they rise once more. You will rise with them. Your cloak is still here, folded but ready. Your sword is close by, its edge still true. Your voice is calm, your step steady. You are the reminder. The echo that says, yes, once there were kings. Yes, once there were queens. Yes, there were geese that tried, and dreams that refused to die. There was a kingdom not built from stone, but from hope, and there was one lost soul, swept out of their own century, who found a story worth staying for. You rise to your feet, you look back only once. To the quiet village that welcomed you without question, then you begin to walk, and as your foot meets the path, the road rises to meet you, and now, as your breath begins to slow and the last flickers of torchlight fade from the corners of your mind, allow yourself to drift. You have journeyed far this night. You've walked through the deep forests of memory, across fields of forgotten valor, and into the quiet halls where myths come to rest. You've stood among heroes, listened to ancient truths, and carried stories not just on your back, but in your heart. This road was not short. Nor was it simple. But you did not travel it alone. Every name you heard along the way walks with you still, like footsteps echoing in sleep. And the silence that now wraps around you. It is not hollow. It is full, brimming with the soft turning of unseen pages and the gentle hush of legends being laid to rest, not with sorrow, but with reverence, let the names linger now like feathers on the air: Arthur, Guinevere, Merlin, Gawain, Elira, Bran, and above all, your own. You, the one who was never supposed to be part of the tale, and yet became the thread that quietly held so many pieces together, as you lie here, eyes gently closed, body growing heavier with each breath. Know this, the kingdom is safe. At least for now. The king below has fallen silent. The voices have been remembered. And the stars above Camelot shine with a calm, watchful light, as if grateful for the telling. You have done more than survive. You have found your place. You have belonged, so rest now. Let the dreams come. Let the stories breathe. Let yourself sleep, you have earned it. Sweet dreams, traveler.